Okay, so today we are going to be learning about stay stitching. Stay stitching is defined as a row of permanent straight stitches sewn on a single layer to prevent stretching in key areas when you're handling the garment during the construction process. So I have some mini examples of stay stitching right here. So as you can see, stay stitching is done on just one single layer of fabric, and it's commonly used on garments that have curves. So as you can see, like in the neckline of this garment or in the hip line of this skirt. And like I said earlier, this is used to help prevent stretching during the rest of your sewing process. So because of that, no back stitching is necessary when you're making your stay stitching, and it will be done at just your regular stitch length that you're using for the rest of your pattern, as well as your seam allowance. It's going to be slightly smaller than the seam allowance that's given to you on your pattern because you don't want this to be seen in your end product. It won't be removed, so it will stay there. But let's say you have a seam allowance of 5/8 an inch from your pattern, then you're going to be doing your stay stitching about 1/2 an inch seam allowance because that won't be seen when your end product is made. So that's kind of the basics of what our stay stitching will look like. From there, we have something that's called directional sewing. So when we're doing our stay stitching, you have to sew them in a specific direction. So as you can see in this bodice example, we start our sewing here at the top corner of the neckline, and we sew down just halfway to the center of the chest. And then we're going to do our other half of the stay stitching, starting at the other corner and meeting at the middle again. And this is for the same reason, to prevent stretching in your garment, and so it's going to give it a more stable length when it's done meeting halfway at the middle. So the same is true for this skirt. Up here, we start at these edges and come meeting at the middle, and same with the length, starting at the bottom, coming up. So those are some visuals of how our stay stitching should look, but now let's go sew some on the machine. Okay, so as you can see, what we did in our sewing was we started up here at the top corner of the shoulder, and going at 1/2 inch, we sewed down into the center point. And if we had a full garment, we would have done the same thing again, starting on this side. And then on the shoulder, we started at the top and went down to this side at the same 1/2 inch seam allowance, going for a pattern that had 5/8 inch seam allowance. So that is our final product. That's our stay stitching, and we are ready to move on with the next step in our pattern.